So we're recording. We can get started if you guys are ready. So Rick, do you have anything to show?
Yeah, I can show stuff related to what I showed last week. Let's see. Okay, so last week I kind of demoed what I did for the kind of daily roll-up screen, the summary screen, discovery screen. I've got a PR out at the moment for review. So it basically puts that screen under the org dashboard. So with the team stuff with metrics and sprints. And you can see, I mean, it's basically the same thing as I had last week. So there's not a lot different here. But then if I click through into the team dashboard, then it adds the same component to the team dashboard as well. And it expands the current day. So there's a little bit more of a kind of call to action to enter today's notebook, today's daily entry, notebook daily. Still trying to work out that in my head. Yeah, that's it really. It just kind of reuses the same component across the different places. So kind of trying to build out more of this kind of smart component idea within web apps. So each component loads its own data and we can reuse it by just passing in a team ID and a little bit of configuration rather than having to actually fetch the data and pass it around. The other thing I'm doing, I'm not sure how this is going to work with resizing this window, but on the individual notebook screen as well, I don't know if you use like tools like Notion, they're obviously quite strict of how much real estate they take up, because if this editor went, if your browser is really wide and stuff, then it would start to get a bit unwieldy how this would react to that and reading, long lines of text. Nobody wants to do that. So just setting a limit on the width of the block editor, and then don't go beyond that, just to make it a little bit easier to consume and edit. And also we can navigate within here. So this is today's notebook, so we get a little today badge. I'll go to yesterday's notebook. We lose the right hand side because that's just at the moment that's purely giving us context for today. So it'll tell us about today's activity and the current issues and PRs that are in flight for my team. What we want to do is then kind of have that information for past notebooks as well, kind of stored, but that's probably a next phase ambition. So at the moment, we're just going to hide that when we're not looking at today's notebook. If I go back, they'll come back. And I can navigate within here to go to different notebooks. And I can also go into the future, and we just had a bit of a discussion around how far into the future we might want to be able to edit, like view and edit notebook, dailies rather. I keep wanting to say notebook. Because we might want to, it might be something that we would populate automatically, or it might be something that we want to be able to edit manually, to like put reminders in or things like that for future dailies to discuss on a stand-up potentially. So I can go forward. And Robin has added the pipeline task, so these now get generated automatically. Previously we're still doing it in web app, so it will create them if it doesn't exist, but we'll get rid of that so that and we'll put a limit on how far in the future you can go to.
And should you be able to set the status in the future? I think we're going to be dump.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good question. I don't know. Possibly. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it could be something, because we also have the kind of emphasis flag, which we've kind of just talked about it a little bit, but never really come to a concrete conclusion of what we would do with that. We're not even exposing it at the moment, but we have it in the data model to do something with. So potentially we could use, and these, obviously we've got a kind of, we've come up with our own statuses here, but again, I think these are just plucked out of Rick's head, really. So, we could look at what we might want to do here in terms of what kind of status we'd want for future ones as well. I'm not sure.
Anybody else have any comment on future status? It seems weird to me. But
My gut says no. Like I wouldn't
yeah, that's
I
my
wouldn't
gut
want to
too.
do the status in the future. It's kind of a daily status, kind of a temperature check of the day. So that's my instinct anyway.
Yeah,
Me
that
too.
makes sense.
The other small nit too on this is like these drop downs. It seems like the default is editable or whatever. You can put focus in and start typing. It seems like that's weird in this scenario where you have a very small fixed list. I'm talking about like the status.
Oh, right, I see. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah,
It's got a caret that's blinking, and it's
Right.
kind of weird
Yeah,
to me.
exactly. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw my comment, Chris. I had another really small bit of feedback as well, and it was just around the hovering on the navigation. So on the other pages, you kind of always see the carets for navigation for the team selector, and here you hover to see it. Just want to make sure that's consistent across each page.
Yeah, so that was kind of, it's partly conscious and it's partly because I was reusing a component that we use in the issue details when you want to edit something back to Jira. And it was kind of because it's a consumption versus composition kind of thing. And obviously we decided to not use the breadcrumb treatment at the top and to try something different because the breadcrumb is good in some respects, but it also kind of loses a bit of the visual hierarchy in the screen. And obviously, the date is the most important thing, so that's why it's kind of brought down and larger. And also, it's kind of, I don't know. I think once you discover it once, it's kind of obvious. But if you think we should, pull that in permanently, then fair enough. But then we'd have an inconsistency between the two unless we left that in as well on the title. But I think that might get a bit busy.
Yeah, I think it should just be consistent across the pages. I only say that because I know we had some feedback before around people didn't really know that was a drop down, even when the caret was there. And you're right. As soon as you realize once, you're like, okay, this is a drop down to change the team. But with the caret not there, it's going to be even less obvious. But like I say, minor thing we can talk about later.
Okay, but yeah, so the PR's out. I'll stick it in the product channel if anyone wants to have a play with it and some feedback would be great.
Yeah, they're nice additions, Chris.
I really like seeing it across the team dashboard at the top. I love that view.
Yeah, me too. I like that. That's cool. I like any kind of navigational stuff from that point is really nice.
You had an org view of that as well, right, Chris? Did we show that last time?
Sorry, what was that? Or the overview of?
There was an org view of all the different teams, kind of dailies over time, right? I've seen that view.
Yeah, that's what I showed to start with. Yeah.
Okay.
So I
Yeah,
put that in the organization. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that one as well. Okay. Thanks, Chris.
So, well, I was going to show the new block editor in, but I'm getting all these TypeScript errors, so I can't demo it. But it's
Can
in.
you show the storyboard or no? Is it not worth it?
Oh, well, the storyboard is what I showed last week. In the product is what I was going to show today, but literally I just merged from master in like 10 minutes before the call, and then I'm all borked up. So.
Rookie mistake.
You got Evan back, so
Be good to maybe figure out what's going on. I mean, I know that's an obvious question, but maybe after this call, a couple people can jump on and figure this out because we can't lose another day with this.
Yep. It's frustrating.
I don't see this, and I don't know if anybody else does, but I guess it's related to your PR, right? It's not related to what's already on master, maybe?
Yeah, it has to be something like that. I mean, yesterday, what it was doing is it was upgrading TypeScript in package lock, and actually you can recreate it if you upgrade your TypeScript to 3.9.
I don't want to get my system in a bad state.
Yeah, don't.
We'll have two people not functioning.
Yeah.
But how is it upgrading? Is it when you just do your npm install, like from
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, I merged master npm installed, and then it upgraded it. Yep.
Wow. Maybe we need to fix instead of using a caret, maybe we need to fix the version of TypeScript in the package.json temporarily.
Yeah. See, what this is what it was this morning. It was 3.5, and when I merged master, it used 3.9. Weird, really weird.
Super weird. All right.
I think we got Evan back. Is your connection working okay now?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I don't really know where I cut out, but we have the grid search parameters, and then I was also just going to show this entity recommendation stuff, just in terms of merging the issue and PR text. So let's see here. So this is just after I ran through the training pipeline. See kind of the bottom of my screen. Here's just one example of linking PRs to issues. So we have this, which is an issue, I believe, this entity ID. Let's see here. Nope, it's a PR. No, it's not. Oh. Second. Yeah, so this is, you can see make off login cookie longer than 1 day. I believe that was Jeff, yeah. So Jeff created that issue. And then it was linked to, let's see, this PR, which is going to be more or less the same PR. Yeah, so it's gold 225 make off login longer than 1 day. So it's taken a lot of the text and actual NLP from the titles of the issues and PRs and linking them that way. So now we're just able to recommend issues when someone subscribes to PRs and vice versa. And yeah, that's really all I had to show in that front.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
For the grid search, can I ask a question on the grid search stuff?
Yeah.
Is the grid search meant to where you can tune hyperparameters per customer, or is that just you run the grid search for each customer and then you save the grid search results, and then so each customer gets potentially has a different grid search result?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have I have a fix for 5 hyperparameters, and each of those hyperparameters will have, I think it's like 4 or 5 options. So the grid search runs through each of those hyperparameters and then each option within the hyperparameters for each customer.
That's cool. So the grid search allows us to tune those hyperparameters by customer depending on, lots of different factors for the customer.
Yeah.
Perfect. Makes sense.
Yep.
Oh, John, did you have anything, or should we move on to Team Bolt?
I can talk through a few things. I don't really have a ton to show because performance tuning doesn't always result in showable things. So there's 2 major bits that have been tuned. Right now there is a new materialized linkage between pull requests and issues. The previous linkage was commits and issues, and that's still what we have to link on the wrong gradients. But a bunch of the custom resolvers in the Graph API tier were doing a whole lot of work to connect pull request commits to issue commits and then doing that linkage dynamically. So it's a whole bunch of extra work that we didn't need to do. So that's now materialized. Jeff's new dashboard, or the stand-up screen, is taking advantage of that. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Another thing that Robert and I went through yesterday and we were fixing, there was some cases where on ID queries, if you have an ID ? Empty array, if you just didn't have any IDs in it, it would return all of the data for that collection for that customer. So we cleaned that up a little bit. So instead of returning, all the issues for our customer, if you hit one of the dashboards, it doesn't return anything, which is what you'd expect. So, it's a lot of just kind of paring away and profiling and stepping through, but we're starting to chip away to a point where I think we're making progress. So if you see stuff that looks weird, let me know. See stuff that's still slow, let me know, and we'll keep banging on it. So,
hey, John, this is kind of related to what Evan said. Would he be able to, using his thing that links issues to PR, would he be able to write these new PR issue linkages directly?
Sure. I mean, he could even look at both of them, right? Use it as an input vector. Like, did we guess wrong?
Oh, cool.
I mean, we could, because it's all the linkage itself is all regex really. So having an NLP flavor would also help too.
Yeah, I was just thinking it'd be cool. Maybe we'd mark where they came from.
Yeah, but I was thinking too that we also need a way from the app to do the PR linkage, because that would be, in case we guess wrong, because it's still a guess, right? So
Yeah, it'd be nice.
I can.
Yeah,
I
if that
can
table's
put that.
mutable, we could just write to it. And then if you have it all wired up already, it just work, right?
Yeah, and you make the table mutable. The other thing is, do we care about pushing PR commits? Do we care about linking all of the commits, or do we just care that the PR is linked?
I think we mostly care about the PR, because once you link a PR, all the portion commits are inherited.
Perfect. Yeah.
Vice versa, if you link a commit, then the PR is inherited, at least in the current system.
Right. I mean, we just need to. It might need to be a custom resolver to enforce that inheritance.
Don't we already do that? Linkage. That's how it used to work.
That's how it works right now when you get an actual issue. But if you were to write the linkage, there's nothing about that pull request that would make it.
You're right. You're right on the mutation. If we did a custom
Right.
mutation, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah, just
that
need a
makes sense.
custom
Okay.
one.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. Good stuff. Let's jump over to Team Bolt now. Let's go fast on Team Bolt.
I can show a little brief demo here of some more profile stuff. I guess this is going to be the last sprint demos before we try to go live with this. So here's where we are currently. So a couple little tweaks here. I know last time we talked about hiding some of the editing UI. So you can see now as I'm hovering on these things, the icons are appearing and they disappear when I'm not hovered. The drag and drop is now fully wired up, and you can see I'm running this unstable. So if you want to go in and play with it, and edit your profile, the more feedback and testing, the better over the next week. But everything's rearrangeable, even like your little social media links. We have a much better UI now around loading states and saving, and you'll see there's also these new buttons up here. So these two are for copying, the pre-formatted embed code and then the pre-formatted profile URL, so you don't have to remember anymore, all the details about that. So I think I had that in on the last demo, but some of this stuff is a little bit tweaked around the UI and some of the drag and drops. So this is pretty much everything that I've sort of had on my plate. There's a couple little tweaks I want to do around how we select these icons, because right now you have to just know the icon code. So I'm going to be changing that over the next couple of days. But for the most part, this is pretty close to what I imagine we're gonna be going with for the first version.
Looking really good. Those make a big difference. Those hovers.
Yeah,
I like
they do.
it.
It's really nice. How about the dashboard? Any updates on that? I know you guys are working on content.
No updates on it yet. I think I'm trying to remember what exactly was there last week. I believe the calendars were all working before, but this stuff's all still working really well. We're getting very close on the activity feed over here, and then that's kind of the last piece other than the notebook. So I guess it won't be ready for another sprint demos before we try to go live with it, but I'll definitely be posting some stuff around feedback and testing for it in the coming days.
How close are we to wiring up the content side?
Pretty close. I have the mutations done. We're just working through some issues with getting the query to run properly.
And then in the center, are you using issue and pull request row? Because it doesn't seem like it, or unless you're just using it in some sort of minimal fashion.
It's the super minimal version.
It is, okay, cool. Thank you.
To sort of talk about the content side, I guess a good amount of our stuff sort of assumes that we have a customer ID, but the content really kind of doesn't. So we're working through some of the assumptions that Graph API and our resolvers are making with in regards to activity items, and figuring out the right ways to address those. Really, the graph part is the last part that I'm working on. The fan out and the content aggregation itself are done and work. It's just getting it to actually properly resolve through graph is where we're at.
Worst case, you could do temporarily a custom resolver, or is it you're saying it's getting it into the database is the problem?
Well, so we've,
You don't have a customer ID.
I mean, just this morning, I got it all sort of figured out with John, and it looks like it's working. Right now, the resolver bit is on the feed side. So the item is good. The feed side is now showing some issues with some ref ID that I have to figure out which one it's talking about, and put an appropriate amount of information in there to whatever it's trying to refer to.
Cool. All right. Let me know if you need any help.
I think it has to do with the creator from looking at the code.
Yeah, makes sense.
What else we got on the bolt side? Got anything today, Nick? Or Mike?
Not really. Nothing to show.
Yeah, I don't really have anything either. Just a bunch of code. I guess I could kind of talk a little bit about kind of what I'm working on the autoscaling end. So just over the last couple of days, coming out of what happened the other week, where we ran into an instance where we were trying to scale up spot instances and there wasn't enough capacity in our region. This is kind of because I was relying on sort of a native Pulumi API to build up the EKS cluster and manage the nodes with like their custom node group API. But it turns out that's not super flexible, and it was never really scalable, but I didn't really think that we'd be hitting such capacity weirdness for spot instances so soon. So what I did was I effectively built out a class that kind of combines launch templates and autoscaling groups. And launch templates are a little bit more powerful than what are called launch configurations, which is kind of like what Pulumi uses natively to kind of manage all the EKS stuff. And these launch templates allow us to specify spot capacity using different node pools. So I can go through and I can say, I want 4 CPU and 16 gigs of RAM to be running on an instance. Then I can define like families, right? And then specify that I want it to use, basically optimize the instances that it launches based on capacity. So for example, when we launch new instances to scale up the cluster in this particular region, let's say US East 1, if there's an issue trying to spin up new spot instances with the MX5, M5X larges, which we've been using, it'll go to the next pool and to the next and to the next, and it'll actually eventually be able to find something that we can run. So we'll avoid getting to this issue where our cluster is constantly thrashing, trying to spin up a node type that really, for which there's no capacity. So I'm combining this launch template with an autoscaling group and trying to automate this to kind of build a new like custom resource, as Pulumi calls it, so that I can essentially package this up and use this elsewhere or with other clusters instead of having to define like a specific launch template with a specific autoscaling group and kind of match those and manage them separately. I'm going to package this all together and basically just call what I'm calling an autoscaling pool object, which is just going to basically build out all of this stuff together and make it really easy to manage. And on top of that, I'm going to be updating cluster autoscaler to improve how we manage capacity on our nodes. So right now they're kind of based on like compute. I really want to optimize it so that it's going to try and pack in more pods. So if it knows that, for example, we've got spare compute capacity on one node, rather than trying to spin up another node to schedule new pods, it's going to try and reschedule pods from other nodes onto that node that has capacity. So just like various optimization stuff and trying to get this really stable. And I've been spending the last day or so just testing it out and seeing like what kind of weird failure scenarios I can run into and stuff like that. So nothing really to demo yet, but soon, really soon. I'd show the code if you guys care. Does anybody care? Actually,
a little bit.
Okay.
It sounds super cool.
Let me pick up this guy. You guys see this?
Oh,
Probably.
wow, like an ant. You have to zoom it like 5 times.
What is that? Code for ants?
There we go. Yeah.
Looks like data science code.
don't worry about this guy.
Oh, so colorful, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the class I'm writing, and this is just the launch template definition here. And this is kind of going to be like the base configuration, right? This is our AMI. This is kind of the base node type that we want. You know, and it's pulling in like all of the cluster information, which is really cool. What I'm struggling with right now is I'm trying to build out the extra args. So that's the thing with, you know, using the Pulumi APIs is it's really easy to kind of add in, you know, node labels and taints and stuff like that, because, you know, it kind of works hand in hand with the custom scripts that AWS uses to provision and bootstrap nodes and get them hooked up to the cluster. So using launch templates, I kind of have to do that on my own. So basically I have to build out, you know, a way to kind of tell the cluster that these nodes are available and stuff like that. So I've almost got this working, but basically what I'm going to do is pass in just the node labels and taints. And you can probably see what that would look like here. This is kind of what it would look like. And so, you know, what we have right now is, you know, these kind of, you have to create all these node groups, and there's like all these weird node group options, and it's very rigid and kind of awkward to do and not really easy to stand up, because you have to come up with like dedicated pricing per node group, per autoscaling group, and that sort of thing. Whereas this is going to give us the flexibility to basically just pop this in and say, you know, I want 5 nodes, I want them to have these labels, you know, and then this is automatically going to go through. And these are the instance types I was talking about before. So these are the overrides. So it already knows that we want M5X larges, but I've also added in new instances from the same or similar families. So in the event that I can't find this, it's going to try and find M5AX larges and M4s and M5Ns, et cetera, and so forth. And I'm debating whether I want to actually do an on-demand base capacity, which would basically mean that at any time we've got 1 or 2 or however many nodes that are just on demand, always running. Debating if I want to add this here, if I want to do that separately in like a separate node group that's tied directly to the cluster, but that's more of a design issue. So anyway, when this is done, this is going to be really cool, and it'll make it much, much easier to manage this stuff and much more redundant.
Nice. That's awesome, man.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Jose, you got anything today, or should we move over to gold miners?
No, I was hoping to show off some of the Autogroom stuff, but the building's internet got taken down, or like has been off for like the past 4 hours with the rain going on. But it's in a good place where next week I should be able to show off both the duplication check and the stale check. But yeah, we're close on the Autogroom stuff, so it's an update from my end.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be good. Just for context, that's something, for anyone who doesn't know, that's working on something that can kind of look through your backlog and find duplicate stale issues and kind of clean those up for you. That'd be awesome. So okay, let's move over to gold miners then.
All right, I'll do a demo. So I'm gonna, I've been working on the stand-up V2, which is ported to use Agile, the Agile board stuff from Agent V4. So there's a couple of new screens in Agent V4. So if you go to the boards tab, which will only show up if you're a V4 customer, you can now see all your boards. And I did rework this tidbit. I don't know if you saw this morning, but I did rework this. So anything that's assigned will show up here. That means it's assigned to different teams. Anything that's unassigned or explicitly marked as not ignored or not set up will show up here. So you can sort of see. I've over assigned a few just to do the demo. Normally we wouldn't have this many boards per team, but just for the demo, I went ahead and assigned them. And it is dynamic. If I change it, it'll immediately update. On V2 of the stand-up, a couple things that, so this takes advantage of a few things that we didn't have in kind of the current version of the agent and the current version of stand-up. So the old version we had open and close kind of thing, or open and done, or something like that. The new one we actually use depending on the board type, we use the columns from the board. So you can sort of see here, I'm using this test board here. This is a Jira Kanban board. Let me go to our main board for a second. So this is kind of our team's main board. It's a Scrum board. And this board actually has 2 sprints attached to it right now. So if you have multiple sprints, if they're active or in the future, they'll show up here. And I'll show you a future one in a minute. If there's only one, obviously you'll just see the one. But if there's multiples, you'll get a choice to choose multiples. Pretty much everything else on the center side's the same. You know, sort of if it's a Scrum board sprint, we'll show you sort of the sprint summary. You get your sort of nice filters up here, so I can filter, you know, by what I'm working on or whatever. So it's going to filter that. We also have this little guy here to jump directly to the board, depending on the system. So if it's in GitHub, you know, GitLab, whatever, it'll jump right to that board like we do in other areas, which is really super convenient if you want to actually go to the board. You can also see that, let me unfilter this. The columns now, the accordion columns or accordion labels rather, tie directly to your board. So if I go back to my board over here in Jira, you can see sort of like to do, in progress, in review, et cetera. That sort of matches up with what we have here. And the order that they're on the board here is the order we're always going to show them as well. So the rank order, so as you do, like you can see 142, 224, 144, 142, 224, et cetera. So as you reorder things on the board here, dynamically it'll automatically reorder, you know, on our board. In a future iteration with Agent 4, you'll also be able to reorder inside of Pinpoint, and then that'll also push back to Jira or whatever your source system is. The other big thing is we do load on demand. It's a little bit hard to see on some of these, but you'll see a little bit, like if it's not loaded, we'll load it on demand. So instead of trying to load all the issues up once, we'll just load them as you twirl down the guy here. Another big addition we added was this ability, like in this case, this is a subtask, or this is a story rather. So a lot of cases, like we found even in our own sprint, we would have a lot of the higher level things like subtask and sprints. So then, so your subtask wouldn't show up on the board, which is a little bit of a pain because you have to click through to find it. So now you can just twirl down. So like in this case, you can see it's got a lot in this one, but you can see you can load all your subtasks up. So I can sort of twirl that down. We indented and colored a little bit different. You can see it's got a lot in it. And then I can still, of course, you know, I can still, of course, do the normal guy here. The other kind of thing that we added as part of this port, which is something we find ourselves doing a lot, was the ability just to filter within the board. Which is super nice because, you know, sometimes you just want to see what's on the board, but I don't want to necessarily search because I don't want to search across everything. I just want to filter kind of what's on my board. So that's kind of nice, and of course you can use it in combination with the person and the filter. Like in this case, obviously that person didn't have it, so but you can also sort of do that as well. A couple other things. I'll show you a couple of things, different types of boards. So let's go to a different one here. Actually, let me find this one here is a better one. Okay, remove my filter. Probably should remove it automatically when you change state. Let's do that. Okay, so this is another one that's kind of cool because this is a GitHub board. So this is a GitHub. So if we click on this guy, you can sort of see this is an actual GitHub issues, and this is a GitHub board. So I'm actually showing here, you can sort of see the 2 columns, Jeff and Russ, because that's what we call them on this board. And then you can sort of see that. So that's kind of neat.
Cool, that's awesome. Can you go to our team? Does our team show up? Nan.
Hold on. Yeah, I'll come to you in just a second.
Okay, cool.
Well, I'll go do that, and then I'll come back. Don't let me forget to do Bolt, because a couple things I'll show on that one.
Don't forget Bolt.
Don't forget Bolt. These won't show up, hopefully, once we have a bug right now we're looking into where there's some issues that are in the board but aren't in our system, so we're working through that. But so these won't normally show up, but we're adding this just to help us debug this. What was your question though, specifically?
Does our GitHub board show up? Because
It's not mapped, so let me go map it real
Oh,
quick.
it's
Let's
not
just do
mapped.
it. What's it
Okay.
called? So let's do it. What's your board called?
Should be called MVP under the Bolt editor or Bolt block editor repo.
That repo, maybe it's not pulled in yet. Huh. I don't see it.
Is the other thing, there's projects. I just noticed this actually. If you go to our org, like just github.com/pinpoint, there's projects at that level, and then there's projects at the repo level.
Yeah, we don't fetch them at the org level right now. I don't think. I think we only fetch them at the repo level. Is that which one you're using?
Yeah, it's at the repo level. Block editor's at the
Okay.
repo level.
Yeah, so that should have been picked up. Block editor, you said?
Yeah.
It has a project, so we'll have to look into why it's not getting picked up. But yeah, it looks like that should show up, but we'll have to look into why it's not showing up on the board. That could be an issue on the agent side, but
okay. All right, cool.
yeah, it should.
That's cool.
It should show up once that has it. Then yeah, it should show up in this list, and then you just have to map it to your team, and then it'll show up on the team.
Cool. That's awesome.
And then you can sort of see these are loading in demand. The other couple things we did on pull requests, we sort of we've got a couple of issues on linkage that we're rerunning linkage right now on Edge, but you can sort of see we broke the pull request into two different accordions. So you have your planned pull requests. Those are any pull requests tied to any issue on your board, and then unplanned. Depending on if it's Kanban or Sprint. If it's Sprint, then any unplanned PR that's created by someone on the team during the sprint period, so the date of the sprint. If it's Kanban, then we just do the last 14 days. So any PR created by anyone on the team during the last 14 days, and we'll likely change that ability to change that date, but Tibbet wanted to do 14 days for now for Kanban. And then last but not least, we also added backlog. So you can get the board's backlog, which is kind of nice, especially once we add the auto grooming and some of this other stuff. Eventually, maybe we'll have a backlog screen, but for now, we can tie it to the board. So let's maybe go to Bolt. So again, future and current. Bolt needs to go fix their sprint. Future, so no issues yet on this future sprint. So we hide the summary because it's a future sprint, and then you can go look at the backlog for that board. And then you can also see like synthetic boards. So these are board, like in this case, this is a board. This is just a query, I believe. This is a query coming right out of Jira. So all those issues are going to show up here just like normal. So this is two different boards that Matt's got, a Scrum and a Kanban. So you can sort of see what that's doing.
That's really nice.
Okay.
I'm curious, one thing we may want to consider in the future is if you select Kanban, like a column, which I know we don't really, today, obviously the paradigm of the UI is the way you have with this whirling down, but I wonder if we want to go to a Kanban column style board just for familiarity's sake down the road. But anyway.
Yeah, Matt and I talked about that. The first version was just to get this to work.
For sure.
And then let Grove relook at it. The only challenge in the horizontal is just you have to make horizontal scroll work, right? Because you get into these weird situations like we see over here where you can't read half the stuff and it just gets really busy.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah. And it may be even something like, without giving too many options, it may be something you could almost like have like a little icon to switch it between horizontal, vertical.
Yeah.
Cool. That's it. Any questions?
It's all super helpful additions to that screen for sure.
Big upgrades there. Do some more testing in there today. Sounds good. Anyone else on gold miners?
Yes. Okay,
there we go.
I think I got it, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna set up the integration. use this method of authentication. And the iteration this time it's gonna fetch the groups I belong to, but also my user itself. So then I can select my personal projects to export them. This is a user account, and all these are group accounts, if you will. So for GitLab, all these are namespaces. So now you can select your personal projects. And for this demo, I'm gonna select only this group, because the second feature that I want to show is webhooks.
Hey, before you do that, what? Oh no, never mind.
Yes.
What were those like weird GUID things at the bottom, like those groups? Can we get like a name or description or something, or are you still working on that?
Yeah, actually that's the name, because I was doing some tests and I create random names. That's what you're seeing, that weird.
Okay, so normally you wouldn't see that.
Exactly, yes. That's
okay.
Right.
Okay.
So it's exporting already. And I think we should have finished now. Or maybe not, but let's see if we have some data already. Oh, and another thing I wanted to say that we can now see issues as part of the same export. Because previously we had two kind of exports, like source code export and work export, but now we have both in the same export. So we can see issues, projects, which are the repos as well. And I'm gonna try to trigger the webhook or PR. As you can see, we only have MR3, and I'm gonna create the MR for the branch MR4. Okay, proceed webhook event. And let's see if it appears here. Or not.
Hey, there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
The top one? Yeah.
Yeah, this one.
That's awesome.
We should have commits as well. I think this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah. And yeah, just that's what I wanted to show you guys.
That's awesome.
Nice job.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Anything else in gold miners? Robin, maybe? You all set?
I don't have really anything to show. Chris kind of showed it, the auto creation of notebooks and dailies 5 days out. That's what I just finished. But I mean, trust me that they're there and that it works.
I'm still going to test it. Okay, I think that's everything for today then. I'll share the video. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks.
See you, buddy.
Bye.
Hey guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.